had to put him in a glass case with ice and air conditioning. The president of Syria, Hafez al-Assad, was extraordinarily upset and sad when he died because they were extremely close friends. And because of Elias, he really protected the Patriarchate from any form of harassment or any issue whatsoever. The whole world just wept. He had been to the United States, and everybody fell in love with him. He was smitten by the war that went on in Lebanon. And some people say that people that were somehow connected to the upheaval in the Lebanon were the ones that kind of did him in. I mean, he made us all cry at one banquet when he says, "When I awake in the morning, I listen to the birds that are no longer there. And I walk in the mountains and no longer see flowers. And the trees have become skeletons." I mean, his verbal description of the destruction was just unbelievable. And we were there, and his brother walked away with a small bag of his underwear. He didn't take anything with him whatsoever. He had an engopian made out of amethyst. That's what the bishop wears, that round dish. And it was, the Virgin Mary was carved out of one big piece of amethyst given by the Tsar of Russia. And it was a gorgeous, it's missing, it's gone. No one knows where all his effects went. If you ever remember that scene in Zorba the Greek, when the woman ran into the room of the dying French woman and stripped it. Well, that's what happened with this great, great man, known for his articulation throughout the Middle East and in the Orthodox world. He was succeeded, and I was fortunate enough to be there when Ignatius the Fourth was elected Patriarch of Antioch. And it would be good for you, if you want to know the different seas, by the way, to look up and see, like, where is Tripoli? It's not in Libya, it's in Lebanon. You have Hama, the ancient sea of Hama, that was recently destroyed by ISIS. And Zahri. Anyway, there's all these 16 seas in the Middle East. And it might do you some good to do some homework to see where they are, because I'm going to talk about those bishops too in another posting. Ignatius, as Metropolitan Philip rightly said, was one of the most Western-minded patriarchs ever elected. He was very well acquainted with the ecumenical world. He had traveled extensively. He spoke English perfectly, French perfectly, Arabic perfectly, Greek, Russian. He had a bright, bright mind. And one of his most major achievements was to build the University of the Belamand, not far from Tripoli, Lebanon, that I've been talking about. It's a first-class university. And the Maronite Patriarch, you know Maronite Patriarch, said, while we were destroying Lebanon, you, Ignatius, were building. And he received great acclamations for his persistence in reaching out to the men and women that could afford to build this interdenominational university where Muslims and Christians, we're not fighting, but we're learning to live together. And in the first commencement speech, he said, "The face of God is written on every one of you." God is not someone only written in a book, but God is written in the hearts of each and every one of you. His commencement address is one of the great speeches that I've heard in my life. Lynn, you could say a word about Ignatius.
I was, again, it's an anecdote. I was thrilled to death to be invited to lunch at his home. And I was expecting something very palatial because, as I said, I had been in this country, I had been to the archdiocesan seat of several archbishops, and they all live, if not palatially, they all live grand. They all live very well, with servants and orderly, very orderly. And Bishop Ignatius, Patriarch Ignatius, invited me to his home. I was going to be doing an article on him and taking pictures, but he didn't want pictures taken while we were eating. And our humble fare was boiled eggs and cheese, which he boiled himself and served to us. And he ended up asking me more questions than I asked him. He wanted to know about what it was like to be a priest's wife and to be working, and how did I get to the Middle East, how did I get to be his guest. He did make me feel very at home and very comfortable, but again, it was something it was a complete surprise to me. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was not expecting the humble fare of boiled eggs and cheese made by his own hand. No servants served it. He put it on the plate in front of us, asked if I wanted water and got the water. I felt like I should be serving him, but he was the servant. Anyway, it was a delightful afternoon, and he was just very curious about my life in the West. That's fine.
It's one of your stories. You have even many more. She interviewed him in Montreal when he made a trip. He really loved Lynn a great deal. And one story is, I was sitting with him in a very formal setting and taking notes on his idea and his vision. He wrote many books, by the way. Some are at our bookstore at the Antiochian Village. He was in a very serious discussion with me when Lynn came into the room with Terry Shaguri, someone else he really had a great deal of affection for. And all of a sudden he stood up. He said, "Anthony, you can leave now. Let me talk to the women." And I had to leave because he wanted to talk to Lynn and Terry Shaguri. And one other story about his life. I would go and sit with him, and so one day I come into I'm at the cathedral, and I'm serving liturgy. And that's a funny story I'll tell at a later date what happened to me that day. But what happened is that at the end of the liturgy, they had a memorial service. And he said to me, "Grab a bowl of wheat and let's come to my room and we'll have breakfast together." His breakfast was the wheat that they served at the memorials. Unbelievable.
He was known for being frugal. I I think that frugality was one of the words that people used to describe him.
He went to Greece on a private jet, and a cab driver took him from the airport to the hotel, and he had to go to the desk clerk and tell him, could you please pay the cab fare? I'd never carry any money. His money all went for the Bellarmine University. That was his baby. And God bless him for that. Now, when he passed, John X was elected. And his story is yet to be told, since he's new. I went to see him in Damascus during the war, and I spent, and forgive my first person singular, everyone told me he's not going to have time for you. But I spent 1 hour, and of course he gave some gifts, and I had given him some funds for his refugee fund, but he would not let me leave without giving me an icon and an open invitation to a conference that was coming up in the next 2 weeks. And but we spent a good hour talking about the situation in America. He's brilliant. He's a monastic. He's a monk, and he was not of age to be elected to the Patriarchate. He was still in Western Europe. They brought him back home, and they changed the canon law, believe it or not. They changed the canon law in order for him to be elected, because they felt that he would be the best candidate to carry on the church in the new era.
You said that you were discussing the situation in America. What were his thoughts? What were his thoughts on it? I mean, because...
Well, he was lamenting Philip's death, for one, and that he wanted to make sure that we would have a strong leader to take Philip's place, as in our present Metropolitan, Joseph Sahlawi. And so we talked about Metropolitan Joseph and about the situation in America as to who would be the best fit for that position that Metropolitan Philip held for so long.
Did he recommend our president?
Mm-hmm.
Our president.
He was very much in favor. There's some other stories around it that don't need to be told now, but he was very much keen on ensuring that, well, we would lose. He did not. No one likes the word self-rule, so that suddenly disappeared. He was very concerned that North America maintained its link to the Patriarchate of Antioch and not be viewed upon as an independent church, not fully connected with the Patriarchate of Antioch.
How much do you think
Philip,
sorry.
Go ahead.
How much do you think his opinion counted for as far as the election was concerned? I mean, did he have a big influence on the re-election, on the election of Metropolitan Joseph?
Absolutely. I mean, even today, his word is law, because they're electing bishops many of them were his students. So his word, I mean, he's an authoritarian. You don't think so, because he's got a quiet, gentle, sweet personality.
Yeah, it's very. It almost seems passive, but it's not. You feel that it's not, but it almost seems. There's always something underneath.
He's got nerves of steel, and don't remember it's his brother that's missing, and
tell the story. Now you can't just say that. And
But one of the two bishops that are kidnapped was his brother, the Metropolitan of Aleppo. And he will not announce that he has died. He refuses to. And even though I had concrete information from the best sources ever as to his fate, he did not want to hear of it. And his concern is that the church, those of us in the diaspora, be it South America, Mexico, Australia, North America, have to be very intimately connected with the Patriarchate of Antioch. Otherwise, he fears for the future of the Patriarchate in the Middle East.
with good reason.
And he tries to stop the Christians from leaving that region of the world for fear of the disappearance of Christianity. As I close on this subject, the late Metropolitan Antony Bashir once wrote that the Church of Antioch has undergone among the worst vicissitudes of history, of wars, dislocation, heresies, and you name it. And yet, the genius of Antioch is its ability to survive and to thrive.
And to prevail.
And those of us living in North America represent all that is best in the Church of Antioch. Pray for the people of Antioch, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, one God. Amen.
Amen.